Yeah, did you watch the episode when Tulsi Gabbard got on to defend herself and Joy Behar starts panicking and going over her notes while Tulsi is refuting everything that she said?
Yeah, I mean, Joy Behar, like, again, these people have dementia. These are people who, like, should not be allowed out of the house. They have a national platform. I mean, it is crazy. They have no idea. These people have never read, like, a book.
I agree with mostly everything that's been said. I mean, we know that, only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
Have you ever noticed how the loudest voices preaching morality are often the ones with the most skeletons rattling in their closets? It's almost a rule. And when those skeletons finally tumble out, usually in the form of a multi-million-dollar federal indictment, the silence from their usual megaphones can be utterly deafening. Well, buckle up, because one of daytime television's most prominent moral arbiters just found herself at the epicenter of a scandal so massive, it's got the kind of price tag that makes seasoned con artists blush. We're talking about Sunny Hostin, co-host of The View, a woman who has built a career on dissecting legal quandaries and societal failings with surgical precision, now entangled, through her husband, in a $450 million fraud allegation that's shaking the very foundations of her public persona. And the reactions from two of media's most unpredictable commentators? Well, that's where this story truly ignites.
But life is random. The only word to describe it when a big game hunter gets trampled by an elephant and then eaten by lions is hilarious.
Sunny Hostin, the undisputed queen of daytime.
The news dropped like a bombshell, yet somehow managed to create only quiet ripples in the mainstream pools where Sunny herself swims. Her husband, Dr. Emmanuel Hostin, a respected orthopedic surgeon, was named in a sprawling RICO case. Yes, you heard that right, RICO. The kind of charge usually reserved for dismantling organized crime empires. The allegation? A staggering $450 million healthcare fraud scheme. This isn't just some minor financial misstep or an accounting error. We're talking about a figure that could fund a small nation, a sum so vast it almost seems unreal. The details paint a picture of a complex web of alleged illicit billings and kickbacks, a sophisticated operation designed to siphon fortunes from insurance companies. And there, right in the middle of it, is the husband of a woman who spends her weekdays on national television lecturing America about ethics, justice, and accountability. The irony is so thick, you could spread it on toast. While Sunny was delivering her verdicts from the high chair of daytime TV, her own household was, according to federal prosecutors, potentially involved in a financial drama that dwarfs most Hollywood scripts. One can only imagine the breakfast conversations. Honey, pass the indictments?
The Sunny Hostin that we all love from one of my favorite shows on The View. And it's always, Tom, what'd you always say? It's always the people that always do the pointing. And it always comes back to them, all right? So when you said this is the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York, you guys wrap that around your brain. That's bigger than the mafia case. Like the mafia one was number one. This one takes it over. So he was scamming insurance companies.
Has to be. If you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin's
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on, for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out.
Now, what's almost as astounding as the alleged fraud itself is the curious case of collective amnesia that seemed to grip The View. This is a show that thrives on dissecting every public scandal, every political misstep, every celebrity faux pas with the fervor of a theological debate. They'll spend entire segments on a tweet, yet when a $450 million scandal involving one of their own spouse erupts, it's suddenly crickets. The silence wasn't just noticeable, it was a glaring, pulsating void. One might expect a somber, carefully worded statement, a brief acknowledgement, perhaps even a segment where Sunny, the legal expert, explains the complexities of such allegations, even if just to distance herself. Instead, it was business as usual, a masterclass in avoidance. The same panel that turns minor celebrity gossip into a week-long symposium suddenly couldn't find the words to address a federal investigation involving hundreds of millions of dollars hitting so close to home. It was as if a memo went out. Today, we'll be discussing the moral implications of pineapple on pizza. But under no circumstances are we to mention the elephant in the room, even if it's currently being fitted for handcuffs. This selective outrage, this sudden inability to confront a difficult truth when it's in their own backyard, became a story in itself, a glaring testament to a different set of rules for the rulemakers.
She is not implicated in the lawsuit at all, but it's just, I mean, Pat, you're married. Tom, you're married. If your husband's doing something, if he's allegedly doing something like this, you guys would know if your wives were up to some nefarious stuff. Let's just not forget who she is. She's been, for years, lecturing America about morality, inequality, systemic failures, and look at her track record. How many times does she have to go on in the past 2 months and look at the camera and do a legal apology for all the stuff that she said on the show? And then she also, on Trump's win, calling the loss because of uneducated white women that Trump won.
We have to know that. This is accused.
All accused. Yeah, all accused, but he's in the RICO. This is a big RICO case that her husband's in there.
Then, from the wilder frontiers of media, enter Joe Rogan. Rogan, whose podcast is less a talk show and more a cultural collision course, didn't just tiptoe around the issue, he cannonballed into it. He's not known for his subtlety, and this was no exception. For Rogan, the Sunny Hostin situation was a prime example of the hypocrisy he often rails against. He immediately zeroed in on the glaring disconnect. A prominent legal commentator, someone who scrutinizes the actions of others with a fine-toothed comb, now uncomfortably close to a massive legal entanglement. Rogan didn't pull any punches, questioning how someone who positions themselves as a moral and legal authority could seemingly be oblivious to such alleged large-scale illicit activities happening under their own roof. He highlighted the media's muted response, suggesting that if this involved a conservative figure, the outrage would be deafening, complete with breaking news banners and round-the-clock analysis. The double standard was, in Rogan's view, palpable. He painted a picture of an elite media class that preaches accountability, but seems to have a convenient blind spot when the scandal involves one of their own. It wasn't just the alleged crime, it was the deafening silence from the very platforms that usually scream the loudest, a silence that Rogan found both telling and deeply hypocritical. He imagined the internal panic, the frantic PR calls, the desperate attempts to pretend nothing was amiss. For Joe, it was less about the legal specifics and more about the grand, almost comedic theater of performative righteousness collapsing under the weight of actual, alleged wrongdoing. He wasn't just reporting, he was roasting, and the smell of burnt hypocrisy filled the digital airwaves.
But it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
And just as Rogan was finishing his verbal takedown, from another corner of the commentary universe, Bill Maher stepped in, not with a flamethrower, but with a scalpel. Maher, the host of Real Time, approaches hypocrisy with a surgeon's precision, often cloaked in a world-weary cynicism. He, too, couldn't ignore the delicious, if unsettling, irony of Sunny Hostin's predicament. While Rogan went for the gut punch, Maher dissected the situation with a kind of detached amusement, as if observing a particularly fascinating species of public figure self-destructing in its natural habitat. He focused on the implosion of Hostin's carefully crafted brand. Here was a woman who had positioned herself as not just an analyst, but a moral compass for the nation. And now, her husband is accused of orchestrating a fraud so audacious, it makes Wall Street pirates look like petty thieves. Maher didn't need to shout. The facts themselves were loud enough. He highlighted the sheer, almost theatrical absurdity. of someone who lectures on integrity being this close to a scandal that could fuel a dozen crime procedurals. His critique was less about volume and more about the incisive observation of how quickly public piety can evaporate when private realities become public knowledge. Maher seemed to revel in pointing out that if the political affiliations were reversed, Sunny herself would likely be leading the charge, delivering impassioned monologues about corruption and the abuse of power. The silence from The View in Maher's eyes wasn't just an oversight, it was a symptom of a larger malaise within media, where selective outrage is the soup du jour, and accountability is a dish best served to others. He didn't rage, he simply raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, letting the implications hang in the air, heavier than any shouted accusation.
Hey, Megan, I get it. I also hate Joy Behar, so I don't love you, but I also hate that squawking bird, so I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show, if the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of there are so many brilliant women out there, none of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No, double
The
X.
Okay.
Double X.
They brought in the lowest of the double X's for that one. It's rough.
What makes this whole episode even more compelling is the unexpected convergence of these two distinct voices. Joe Rogan and Bill Maher are hardly ideological bedfellows. They occupy very different spaces in the media landscape. Rogan, the renegade podcaster exploring everything from MMA to psychedelics, and Maher, the veteran political satirist holding court on HBO. They agree on very little, often finding themselves on opposite sides of cultural and political debates. Yet, on the matter of Sunny Hostin's husband and the ensuing media silence, they found common ground. Both, in their unique styles, pointed to the same glaring hypocrisy. Both saw the irony of a self-proclaimed moral authority becoming entangled in such a monumental scandal. And both were unafraid to call out the mainstream media's, and particularly The View's, conspicuous silence. It was as if two very different chefs, using entirely different ingredients and cooking methods, ended up preparing a dish that tasted remarkably similar. A potent brew of skepticism and mockery aimed squarely at the crumbling facade of media elites. This wasn't a coordinated attack. It was a spontaneous eruption of incredulity from two commentators who, despite their differences, share a disdain for pretense and double standards. The fact that Sunny's situation managed to unite Rogan and Maher in their critique speaks volumes about the sheer, undeniable awkwardness of her position and the media's handling of it. Her silence and the silence of her show became the punchline that both comedians, in their own way, delivered with gusto.
I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide. But can I just...
Very strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, it's interesting because I think Sunny is very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured.
Right.
That's sort of, I think the other ones, there's a couple of the other ones, don't have to name any names, who are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart but captured.
Sure, I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course. They do everything with an agenda.
Yeah.
The shadow of this scandal grows even longer when you consider Sunny Hostin's own track record on The View. This isn't the first time she's navigated choppy waters, though nothing on this scale. She's had to issue on-air clarifications and legalese apologies for statements made on the show before, moments that, in hindsight, add another layer to the current predicament. Her sometimes fiery, definitive pronouncements on complex issues, occasionally veering into controversial territory, have established her as a figure who doesn't mince words. For instance, her remarks following Trump's election, attributing his win in part to uneducated white women, stirred considerable debate. These past instances, where her words have led to public scrutiny or retractions, now sit uncomfortably alongside the current crisis. It's one thing to be a sharp-tongued commentator who occasionally missteps. It's quite another to be that commentator while your spouse is facing allegations of a $450 million fraud. The juxtaposition is jarring. The moral authority she projects on screen, the unwavering confidence with which she dissects the failings of others, now feels profoundly undermined by the colossal legal storm brewing in her own home. It creates a credibility chasm that no amount of on-air deflection or strategic silence can easily bridge. Each past controversial statement, each previous apology, now seems to echo with a new, unsettling resonance, amplified by the sheer magnitude of her husband's alleged transgressions.
But isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
That's correct. I think that's not actually.
This whole saga isn't just about one TV host or one alleged financial crime, however massive. It peels back the curtain on a much broader issue: the accountability, or lack thereof, within certain echelons of the media elite. There's a perception, fueled by incidents like this, that a different set of rules applies to those who wield the megaphones. The do as I say, not as my spouse allegedly does vibe is strong. Performative punditry, where outrage is dialed up or down based on political expediency or personal connections, erodes public trust. When the champions of transparency suddenly go opaque, when the loudest critics of corruption fall silent in the face of it within their own ranks, it sends a clear message. Accountability is for thee, but not for me. The View, a show ostensibly about offering diverse perspectives, paradoxically presented a united front of silence, a singular view of nothing to see here. It's this selective application of scrutiny that Joe Rogan and Bill Maher, each in their own way, so effectively dismantled. They weren't just commenting on a scandal, they were commenting on the system that allows such scandals to be tiptoed around by those who, on any other day, would be leading the charge with pitchforks and torches. The entire spectacle raises uncomfortable questions about who gets to define morality in the public square, and what happens when their own moral houses are allegedly built on foundations of sand, or in this case, perhaps, a mountain of illicitly obtained cash. The narrative of the infallible media moralist takes a significant hit when the drama unfolding off-screen is more scandalous than anything discussed on screen.
Saw you on The View.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been overwhelming my past couple days. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character in that way.
Well, it is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean,
yeah.
it is a rabies-infested hen house. Audience is not really their audience. Their audience is a group of people they bring in to watch television shows. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen audiences before for TV shows, but a lot of them are paid. They're paid to be there. So, because they have to guarantee that there's going to be people there. So there's services that you hire. And when a show gets really, really popular, you know, like Letterman or something like that, obviously it has its own fan base.
Right.
Those people will try to get tickets before anybody else does. And in that case, they probably don't need to use a service anymore. They just get actual fans. But arguably, like, the fans, the real fans of The View that are like, oh, these ladies are on point, most of those people can't leave the house. Like, they're probably immobile.
Ultimately, what are we left with? A talk show host whose public image is now inextricably linked to one of the largest alleged healthcare fraud cases in recent memory. A daytime program, The View, that prides itself on tackling tough conversations, suddenly struck dumb when the conversation hits too close to home. And two of the most iconoclastic commentators in media, Joe Rogan and Bill Maher, finding themselves in unlikely agreement as they skewer the hypocrisy of it all. The silence from Sunny Hostin and her show has been, ironically, more eloquent than any statement they could have made. It speaks to a level of protected status, a reluctance to engage with uncomfortable truths when they involve one of their own. This isn't just about alleged financial misdeeds. It's about the currency of trust and credibility in a media landscape already fraught with cynicism. When those who demand the highest standards from others fail to meet them, or even address them. In their own sphere, the entire edifice of public discourse feels a little more fragile. The story leaves us pondering the chasm between the carefully curated personas we see on our screens and the complex, often messy realities that lie beneath. And perhaps it serves as a stark reminder that the loudest preachers are often the ones most in need of their own sermons. The moral of the story? Maybe it's that if you live in a glass house, you shouldn't just avoid throwing stones. You should also probably make sure your spouse isn't stockpiling them in the basement, especially if they're worth $450 million. The questions linger far beyond the closing credits of any talk show.